Speaker, sir, for allowing me to take the floor after the soliloquy of some 55 minutes of the Leader of Opposition. From where I am sitting, I have observed the members on the other side of the House, and nobody has followed him. You know why? Because he has come up with a repetition of arguments used by himself and his colleagues on the other side of the House in the recent past. Et ceci parce qu'il est mal à l'aise avec ce budget. Vu le nombre de mesures en faveur des pauvres, des handicapés, de la classe moyenne, des employés, et j'en passe. Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations. These are the words of Jack Lew, former United States Secretary of the Treasury. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, sir, an expression of our values and aspirations. This present budget is an embodiment of our vision, which is to reduce inequalities and generate wealth and prosperity with the people, for the people. Especially at this specific juncture, when external factors have severely challenged our marge de manœuvre. Governing is about making choices, the right choices. Any decision maker will tell you that, especially when faced with scarcity and complexity. Ce n'est pas le leader de l'opposition qui nous dira le contraire. Il a été lui-même appelé à présenter le budget à 3 reprises dans le passé. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, you will agree that the socio-economic indicators keep changing every time a Minister of Finance comes in this venerable assembly to present the state of the national economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to set the tone by painting a picture of the global macroeconomics and the current economic conjuncture, something that the Leader of the Opposition has failed to do. Only last Tuesday, the World Bank slashed its global growth forecast by 1.2 percentage points to a subdued rate of 2.9% for 2022, right from 5.7% estimated for 2021. Growth rates in emerging markets and developing economies has similarly been downgraded to 3.5% lately in the Global Economic Prospects, publication by the World Bank in June 2022. Inflation is another topical issue globally. The Honourable Leader of Opposition has been talking about inflation, but containing his arguments to Mauritius only. Let me remind him that not later than Friday last, the annual inflation rate in the US reached a 40-year high of 8.6%. We are talking of inflation rates not seen in the largest economy in the world since December 1981. As at April 2022, the UK reported an annual inflation rate of 9%, while that of the Eurozone soared to a record of 8.1% in May 2022. Energy and food prices are on the rise globally due to the protracted conflict between Russia and Ukraine. These are solely on the back of exogenous factors. Let us not pretend that rising consumer prices and consequently eroding purchasing powers are realities restricted to Mauritius only. Mr. Speaker, sir, what we do not say is often more revealing than what we say. And from what the Honourable Leader of Opposition argued in his intervention, I get the feeling that he is refusing to appreciate matters in the right perspective. Je dois l'admettre, par contre, que même le leader du MMM a reconnu que le gouvernement a fait des efforts. Mais c'est dommage que notre leader n'a pu que qualifier ce budget de 152 milliards de roupies des œufs et des omelettes. Que c'est triste, Monsieur le Président. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the face of the global economic quagmire, with repercussions worldwide and on our domestic economy, it takes courage and compassion to roll out a colossal amount of 15 billion rupees to beef up the disposable income of households. This in itself testifies of our commitment to the interests of the country before anything. We have ensured that this budget rises to the expectations of our citizens without jeopardizing our fiscal sustainability. The budget has been engineered in a way that it casts a net of social protection over the most vulnerable and sets the right framework while providing adequate funding to steer the economy on steady grounds. I must reiterate that every government has a duty of fiscal policy making based on the economic conjuncture, but also the responsibility of introducing measures that will provide sustainability. We as a government, we have clearly balanced our act. Looking at the current public sector debt mix, 76% of our debt is domestic debt, that is in Mauritian rupee terms. Only 24% is foreign debt. By 2025, the latter is estimated to dwindle to 20%, that is below the benchmark of 25%. The debt servicing ratio as a percentage of GDP is estimated to stand at 2.5% at June 2022, much lower than the limit of 3.5%. A deeper analysis of the debt metrics is far more insightful than merely looking at the public debt to GDP ratio in isolation. Therefore, appreciating the budget in that specific context provides me with a different perspective, a totally different reading, one of hope, one of resilience, and one of compassion. Mr. Speaker, sir, we believe in consistency, continuity, and stability. My reading is that the budget sets a strong foundation for the future, while placing people at the center of its focus. It rolls out measures for modern infrastructure, ramps up its sustainability, drives and promotes inclusive growth. The Honourable Leader of Opposition should realize that as a small economy, we have been facing successive major blows within a decade. A trade war, the COVID-19 pandemic, the war between Russia and Ukraine, latent geopolitical tensions. These have led to massive disruptions to the established economic order. Monsieur le Président, je pense que l'honorable leader de l'opposition ne doit pas faire abstraction du fait qu'on se relève lentement, mais sûrement d'une situation précaire et qu'il y a urgence de consolider notre économie. Et la responsabilité fiscale demeure une condition sine qua non. Des largesses économiques démesurées ne peuvent que mettre en péril notre relance. L'honorable leader de l'opposition devrait savoir que Maurice a déployé le 4e plus grand forfait d'aide au monde, soit 32% du PIB, pour soutenir l'économie et les plus vulnérables durant les 2 dernières années. Let's talk about fuel prices, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am sure that the honorable leader of opposition knows that the price of Brent crude, the global benchmark, shot up past $120 a barrel, its highest level since early March 2022. The sad reality is that triple-digit oil prices are likely to stick around for some time, according to international experts, given the disruptions in the global oil market. The rise of crude prices in the international market is not the doing of this government, nor that of any government for that matter. It results purely from the dynamics in the oil markets. Oil-producing countries cannot match the global demand due to reductions in output by Russia, one of the biggest global oil producers, by nearly 1 million barrels per day since April this year. This could even reach about 3 million barrels per day in the near future, according to the International Energy Agency. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and its allies are already struggling to keep pace with the current demand. Even core OPEC members such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Kuwait exported considerably less last month, as they have already hit their capacity limits. Such is the state of the oil market. What were the alternatives, Mr. Speaker, sir? Jeopardize the financial situation of the STC, State Trading Corporation, or reduce the subsidy on LPG, flour, and rice? Is it what the leader of opposition wants really? Talking about food commodities. Mr. Speaker, sir, Russia and Ukraine together supply 16% of the world's cereals, account for 25% of global wheat exports, provide 16% of corn exports, and 56% of the exports of sunflower oil. Restrictions on production and exports of these primary products has caused huge uncertainties on their availability over the short to medium term, thereby leading to food protectionism. In response, we need to build a diversified, resilient, and reasonably self-sufficient economy underpinned by productive, healthy, and inclusive society. As clearly highlighted during the budget speech, spending on the population is not a cost, it is an investment in human capital, an investment in the well-being of a prosperous nation. This is the ultimate aim of the present budget, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been much talk of our economy foundering, just as Sri Lanka. This has been the center of criticisms leveled against government for the past months by members of the opposition. As I have the floor and the opportunity today, allow me to delve into a deeper analysis of the matter and show to what extent their analysis is flawed and unsubstantiated. IMF, in its Article 4 2021 report on Sri Lanka, highlights that the latter is highly vulnerable to external shocks due to the lack of adequate external buffers. On the debt mix, an estimated 64% of Sri Lanka's public sector debt is external debt, while only 24% of our public sector debt is external debt, implying that most of our debt servicing is done in Mauritian rupees. Over the years, prudent management allowed us to build foreign currency reserves amounting to $7.1 billion as at May 2022, representing an import cover of 14.5 months. Sri Lanka, conversely, has historically been holding only some 3 months' worth of imports in foreign currency. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition should laud us for proper management. Debt sustainability is another issue impacting Sri Lanka. Mauritius introduced timely reforms and repayment of foreign loans in order to keep the debt ratio at sustainable levels. Same cannot be said for Sri Lanka, much to our credit again. Tourism earnings were starkly affected by unfortunate bomb attacks in Sri Lanka in 2019 and further compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. Mauritius also faced the same COVID-19 pandemic, with the tourism industry badly impacted. But we introduced a series of key measures, such as the wage assistance scheme, and successfully managed the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, our economy remains anchored on diversified foundations, with a non-tourism sector currently leading the recovery of the economy to pre-pandemic levels. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, talk of comparison between Sri Lanka and Mauritius is gibberish. Questions have been raised on our ability to finance the current budget. It is evident that the economy will benefit from the complete reopening of our borders, tourist inflows, increased export earnings, and the financial services sector contribution now that clouds have dissipated. Our GDP, gross domestic product, is set to be higher relative to 2021 and 2020, at an estimated 498.6 billion rupees for fiscal year 2021-2022. It is forecasted to rise to 576.1 billion rupees in fiscal year 2022-2023. That is, it will be 77.5 billion rupees, or 16% higher year on year. In line with the current economic conjuncture, it is logical for any government to reallocate its expenditure composition, reducing capital expenditure and increasing recurrent expenditure without harming the productive and meaningful longer-term initiatives. The government's net borrowing requirements is projected to be around 3.2 billion rupees compared to around 18 billion rupees in fiscal year 21-22. Mr. Speaker, sir, figures I have quoted are immutable facts, facts which are not being mentioned by the Honourable Leader of Opposition. Therefore, it is up to the members of the House and the population at large to assess and judge the pertinence of the figures that I have just put forward. I will now elaborate on each of the portfolios falling under my ministry. Mr. Speaker, sir, the manufacturing sector is already recording its pre-pandemic performance despite complex circumstances. It accounts for 13.3% of gross value addition, 15.1% of total employment, and almost 82% of domestic exports. It is today evolving on strong foundations with a large group of operators comprising of 233 export-oriented enterprises, 326 non-export-oriented enterprises, that is large domestic-oriented enterprises, and 18,180 SME manufacturing units. In 2021, the sector posted a growth rate of 10.2% as compared to contraction of 17.8% in 2020. Manufacturing output increased to 129.5 billion rupees in 2021, which is above the pre-COVID-19 performance registered in 2019. In the same vein, domestic exports witnessed a positive growth of 9% in 2021, after a drop of 8.1% in 2020. On its side, the export-oriented enterprises sector has registered an increase of 14.4% in exports in 2021, following a negative growth of 11.8% in 2020. Let me provide some figures to illustrate this export performance at sectoral levels. Export of textiles and clothing grew by 8.7%. Fish and fish preparations recorded an increase of 6.7%. Export of medical devices posted an increase of 35.3%. Jewelry and precious stones registered a surge of 45.6% in exports, and watches and clocks witnessed an increase of 70.5% in exports. Mr. Speaker, sir, our strategy to rebalance exports has been producing good results, as evidenced by the figures I have just elaborated. It is worth pointing out that South Africa has become our #1 export destination, surpassing traditional markets in Europe and the USA. In fact, our operators are capitalizing fully on the SADC trade agreement to export on a duty-free basis to South Africa, thereby overshadowing low-cost competitors such as China, which are subject to duty imposition of 15% on yarn, 22% on fabrics, and 30% on finished garments. We are also building on a well-structured manufacturing base, capable of being proactive and responsive to changing trends, which not many African countries can replicate. Furthermore, a nearshoring strategy adopted by many South African buyers is also playing in our favor. These buyers now prefer to source from our operators to cut down on logistic costs and delivery time due to unpredictable conditions prevailing in other major sourcing destinations. I am confident that the momentum gained on this market is likely to accelerate with the unlocking of new opportunities under the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. The budget measures relating to the regional feeder vessels, which I will elaborate later on, will also contribute in strengthening our foothold in Africa and give an added boost to our Africa strategy. Similarly, we have started to make progress on the Asian markets with the coming into effect of the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation and Partnership Agreement, SECPA, with India, and the Free Trade Agreement with China. Indeed, domestic exports of goods to India surged from 1 billion rupees in 2020 to reach 1.7 billion in 2021, representing an increase of some 60%. In addition, domestic export to China jumped from 583 million rupees in 2020 to 938 million rupees in 2021, depicting a rise of again 61%. We are now exporting products such as refined copper, special sugar, animal feeds, fish oil, cotton yarn, and shirts to China. Our export performance in traditional markets such as UK, France, Germany are also encouraging despite cutthroat competition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I firmly believe that there is an urgent need for us to push forward our market consolidation and diversification strategy to further enhance our resilience. In this context, I am working in close collaboration with the Economic Development Board for a revamped export promotion strategy. We intend to further strengthen our presence in traditional markets and explore new emerging markets such as Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and Africa. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am also providing a particular attention to the US market, which represents our third largest export destination. Mauritius has capitalized on the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGWA, since the last 22 years to penetrate the US market on a duty-free and quota-free basis. We are all aware that the AGWA is due to expire in 2025. It is now the right time for us to start planning alternative actions not to jeopardize export earnings to the tune of 4.3 billion rupees. I wish to inform members of the House that my ministry has already started working on a strategy which will guide future policy actions in a post-AGWA era. I will soon have a working session with my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade. I wish to reiterate that Mauritius is reputed as a reliable and preferred sourcing destination, supplying branded and high-quality products to international buyers. And this would not have been achieved without the resilience and the tireless efforts of our operators. As importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also the result of bold initiatives taken by this government through accompanying support measures. Had it not been so, many manufacturing enterprises would have closed down, putting the livelihoods of many families at stake. For instance, government provided financial support to the tune of 605 million rupees in financial year 2020-2021 and 110 million rupees during the period July 2021 to May 2022 to the manufacturing sector under the Wage Assistance Scheme. On the other hand, the Trade Promotion and Marketing Scheme, TPMS, previously known as Speed to Market Scheme, was introduced in 2016. It provided a 40% rebate on air freight costs to Europe to countervail the threats emanating from Brexit. In the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, we increased this rebate to 60% and extended it to include additional markets in Africa, in Japan, Australia, USA, Canada, Middle East, and Vietnam. Since the inception of the scheme up to May 2022, government has injected 861 million rupees, which have benefited 104 manufacturing companies and 394 agro-businesses. Regarding the freight rebate scheme, which provides a refund of 25% on the basic ocean freight cost, it was extended to catalyze exports on the Indian Ocean and African regions. Since the introduction of the scheme up to May 2022, an amount of 112.2 million has been disbursed to 94 enterprises. Mr. Speaker, sir, I note with great satisfaction that my ministry's proposal has been favorably considered by the Honourable Minister of Finance. The Trade Promotion and Marketing Scheme and the Freight Rebate Scheme have been extended for an additional year. In respect of the Export Credit Guarantee Insurance Scheme, some 19 manufacturing enterprises have benefited from 9.9 million rupees for insurance cover on exports since the inception of the scheme up to April 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, manufacturing enterprises are evolving in a highly volatile environment, which is fraught with uncertainties. Fully conscious of this situation, officers of my ministry are maintaining close contact with operators to be attuned to the challenges they are facing. I am regularly apprised of these ground realities through reports that are provided to me. I personally keep very close contact with industry operators through meetings and site visits to gauge their difficulties and provide targeted support. Furthermore, I have maintained the principle of sharing information on export performance with our main stakeholders, including apex private sector organizations, through regular press conferences. This exercise goes hand in hand with my policy of maintaining close proximity with the business community. Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the recurrent concerns raised by the manufacturing enterprises relate to rising freight costs resulting from higher fuel prices and port bottlenecks worldwide, which are undermining their competitiveness. The budgetary measure of 50% reduction in port charges on exports, coupled with the extension of schemes related to market connectivity, will certainly address these issues and provides a much-needed breathing space to exporters. I appreciate the fact that the representations made by our manufacturing operators have been fully taken on board. Our export manufacturing sector is highly dependent on reliable and efficient market connectivity for its development process. Transportation by sea is instrumental in the import of raw materials and the export of finished goods to regional markets. This government came up with this game-changing measure of 2 regional feeder vessels to address the recurrent issue of erratic shipping frequencies and contribute effectively to our Africa-Asia strategy. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are aware that labor shortage continues to plague the manufacturing sector. In this context, my ministry organized in November last a consultative workshop with all stakeholders under the scheme Mapping Manufacturing Skills for the Future to identify skills gap and future skills needs of the sector. Recommendations made during the workshop are being implemented at the level of respective institutions to ensure that the manufacturing sector is serviced adequately with skilled manpower. Speaker, sir, you would certainly concur with me that automation with the adoption of latest technologies associated with Industry 4.0 constitute the only pathway to remedy the overarching problem of labor shortage, which is constraining the development of the manufacturing sector. My ministry is exploring the possibility of obtaining technical assistance of international organizations to encourage enterprises integrate advanced technology into their business processes and attract a new breed of skilled and talented workforce. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to underscore that the implementation of the Industrial Policy and Strategic Plan 2020-2025 is well underway, with around 53% of the recommendations in the pipeline. Mr. Speaker, sir, to cite amongst a few, access to finance has always been a major source of concern for manufacturing enterprise, which has been duly flagged out in the IPSP. The Modernization and Transformation Fund of 5 billion rupees provided in the last budget was one of the main recommendations of the IPSP. This fund, which is managed by the new entity, that is the Industrial Finance Corporation of Mauritius, IFCM, since February 22, is set to foster a new financial ecosystem in Mauritius by supporting the transformation of enterprises through the adoption of latest technologies. As of now, I am informed that under the Modernization and Transformation Fund, projects from 8 enterprises have already been approved for a total amount of 210 million rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget has gone the extra mile to enhance the growth potential of the manufacturing sector. The organization of a Semaine de l'Industrie locale mentioned in the budget speech will provide us with a unique opportunity to showcase the savoir-faire of our manufactured products to the population. Such an event will not only enhance the visibility of our locally manufactured products, but it is also well aligned with our import substitution strategy. The event will also depict the level of ongoing development achieved by highly modernized manufacturing enterprises, which have adopted state-of-the-art technology. It will also prove to be a magnet for local talents to join this sector. This budget also provides for the operationalization of a virtual exhibition platform for locally produced goods. I am confident that such an initiative will prove to be a strategic marketing tool to enable our manufacturers develop business relations digitally and have a wider global market outreach. Mr. Speaker, sir, to sustain the development of the manufacturing sector, the contribution of support institutions and departments under the purview of the Industrial Development Division is crucial. The Assay Office, as at March 2022, has assayed 265 samples of gold, silver, and platinum. In line with government policy to encourage local production of food products, Mauritius is developing further accreditation schemes. On its side, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Mauritius Standards Bureau, MSB, has developed 30 new standards relating to energy efficiency, plastic pipes and fittings, and safety of electric appliances for the past financial year. Over the years, the Fashion and Design Institute, FDI, has been promoting creative and design education. The Institute is currently in the process of internationalizing its services and visibility. In March 2022, the FDI organized its first fashion show and an international design conference on sustainable and innovative design, regrouping international designers in the Middle East. In a bid to promote productivity, the National Productivity and Competitiveness Council, NPCC, has launched several projects relating to capacity building and resilience. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will now come to the SME division. SMEs remain the most vital force of our economy. They provide 44% of all employment, contribute around 34.9% to the gross value added, and 10% of exports. Given the substantial weightage of SMEs in the Mauritian economy, disregarding proactive measures to that sector have resulted in negative ripple effects and denting the state of the national economy. Reason why, Mr. Speaker, sir, attending to the speedy recovery of sectors across the SME spectrum post-COVID-19 has been a strategic focus of my ministry since the beginning of the pandemic. It would be fitting to recall that some 14,600 SMEs, covering around 90,300 employees, have benefited from the wage assistance scheme from March 2020 to March 2021 for an amount approximating 4 billion rupees. Our response to relaunch, Mr. Speaker, sir, had it not been for this unprecedented élan de solidarité from government, the SME sector would have been foundering. Through the wage assistance scheme, government has managed to contain the adverse impact of the pandemic on SMEs. This fact is recognized by a majority of beneficiaries in the SME sector, as evidenced by a survey conducted by the research team of SME Mauritius and published in November 2021. A further sequel of the pandemic has been slower sales resulting in deteriorating cash flows. The effect was more marked among the smaller units that are more vulnerable and which make part of a sizable 80% of all Mauritian SMEs. Lack of finance would have been curtailed. Lack of finance would have curtailed development plans, affecting SME competitiveness and subduing growth. The disbursement of 4.7 billion rupees as loans and equity to some 12,000 SMEs has helped them from falling in further distress. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I move to the salient statistics and achievements of the SME sector, may I reflect on a decision taken back in 2017. I propose the closure of the ex-MEDA and its replacement by a private company, namely SME Mauritius. We faced unwarranted criticism, me personally. But today, I am satisfied that facts and figures uphold the decision I took in 2017. SME Mauritius operates with only half the workforce of the ex-MEDA, a total of only 54 employees. But it strikes me as an agile, service-oriented support institution focused on its mandate of consultancy, advisory, and training. Not only is it delivering effectively on its core objectives and its mandate, but is eager to set higher standards and improve constantly. Mr. Speaker, sir, despite the logistical difficulties and restrictions, SME Mauritius has stepped up its outreach and sensitization campaigns. Over the past financial year, more than 50 sensitization and information meetings have been conducted with diverse segments of the Mauritian public, primarily women and youth, to promote entrepreneurship. Furthermore, in its urge to constantly improve customer experience and support, SME Mauritius has been revamping its premises at Coromandel. As previously planned, the leather studio was inaugurated in August last year. The jewelry 3D printing and CNC studio, machinery, and peripherals are at an advanced stage of procurement. The fully restored SME Mauritius office at Rodrigues was inaugurated in April last. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to further improve resilience of SMEs in the face of the challenges posed by COVID-19 and its aftermath, SME Mauritius responded with customized schemes to cover more than 35 components relating mostly to functional areas of SMEs. For financial year 2021-2022, 812 SMEs have benefited directly from these schemes, up from 676 for the previous year. These 812 SMEs have a joint turnover of 2.3 billion rupees and employ 3,062 people. In a close mapping of the SME sector distribution by size, 73% of all schemes have gone to micro SMEs, 19% to small SMEs, and 8% to medium-sized SMEs. The four main sectors of activity that have benefited from the schemes are manufacturing with 52%, services with 23%, 13% for construction, and 12% for agro-business and others, which is again aligned to the national pattern. In a sustained effort and declared intent to improve the internal capabilities of SMEs and support the adoption for productive technology, 92% of all schemes provided were on technology and innovation and internal capability development schemes, while 5% went to support utility connection for businesses. It is noteworthy to underline that over the past 2 challenging years, 1,488 SMEs have benefited from the customized schemes of SME Mauritius. The joint turnover of these beneficiaries is 5.1 billion rupees, and they jointly employ some 7,000 people. The total amount approved in favor of SMEs is 75 million rupees, of which 60 million have already been disbursed. It is highly comforting and a further heartening sign of inclusiveness that 60% of all beneficiaries are women-owned or women-led enterprises. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to ensure adequate capacity building and the continuous upgrade of our entrepreneur digital skills and technological competence, SME Mauritius has expanded its offer of innovative skill and management courses in its regional business centers of Rosebel, Bel-Air, Goodlands, and Coromandel. Over the past year, SME Mauritius has provided training to some 2,175 entrepreneurs, of which 1,009 were online courses. 620 benefited from training in skills and crafts. 546 benefited from training in management-related fields. It is encouraging to note that more than 30% of the trainees have set up their own business. Mr. Speaker, sir, the conception, execution, and implementation of SME employment scheme has been a resounding success. While the initial objective of government was a placement of 1,000 graduates, SME Mauritius has since inception placed almost 3,000 young people with SMEs. Today, 663 graduates and 305 diploma and TVET-free holders remain in place. The SME employment scheme has played a wider economic and social role by creating jobs for our youth, island-wide and in Rodrigues. The scheme has also been a way to prevent fully qualified young people remaining idle. Their stipend has conveniently gone towards upkeep costs and towards the repayment of debts which parents have contracted for their children's studies. The number of residents by district placed under this scheme is as follows. For Pamplemousses, we have placed 131, Rivière-du-Rempart 116, Flac 161, Plain Williams 129, Moka 90, Black River 80, Grand Port 94, Savane 104, and for Port-Puisse 350. In Rodrigues, the number of placements is 139. Mr. Speaker, sir, our policy for SMEs is crafted around the 10-year master plan, which we started implementing back in 2017. 5 years down the road, new uncertainties and risks, new challenges and realities have emerged. At the same time, new opportunities which could further foster SME growth, development and competitiveness are unfolding. In this context, my ministry, in collaboration with concerned stakeholders, is carrying out a mid-term review of the 10-year master plan for the SME sector, which would be completed shortly. The present budget contains a host of attractive measures that create the essential conditions to reignite the SME sector. We welcome the proposed amendment to the SME Act, increasing the turnover limit, defining SMEs to 100 million rupees. A new category of mid-market enterprises with a turnover of up to 250 million rupees will also be introduced. This adjustment conveys intent and ambition. It brings a missing middle into the mainstream of our institutional support. This will allow a greater number of operators to avail themselves of schemes meant for SMEs. As importantly, the redefinition aligns with regional metrics and opens up opportunities for local and regional value chain integration, partnerships, joint ventures, and mergers. Mr. Speaker, sir, for long, lack of finance has been cited as an obstacle inhibiting growth of SMEs. We are fully supportive of the 4 measures announced to provide SMEs with adequate financial resources to support their growth. Namely, 1, the provision of 5 billion rupees at the DBM. 2, the setting up of a venture capital fund of 5 billion rupees. 3, the extension of the SME interest-free loan scheme and the COVID-19 special support scheme up to June 2023. And 4, the waiver of tax penalties for SMEs will all contribute to further alleviate the financial burden of SMEs. Access to international markets remain a challenge for SMEs, with a view to give a boost and encourage exports of locally manufactured products. This budget has made provision for SMEs to benefit from the freight rebate scheme on the South African market. Moreover, the SME International Fair Refund Scheme will be open to freeport operators. Mr. Speaker, sir, SMEs should be encouraged and empowered to exploit new business opportunities, create new jobs, and to stimulate innovation. We are encouraging more SMEs to engage in promising sectors like food and fruit processing. The Development Bank of Mauritius will invest in the development of a fruit processing cluster at Rivière-du-Rempart, with units up to 100 square meters for some 50 SMEs. Provision of 4 million rupees has also been made for the setting up of a maximum of 4 mini fruit processing plants for SMEs and cooperatives. SMEs are also being encouraged to engage in ornamental fish farming, an activity which is gaining prominence. Furthermore, we believe that SMEs can leverage on Mauritius' rich biodiversity, which offers considerable scope for the use and development of aromatherapeutic and nutraceutical plants, flowers, as well as stevia. In this context, a provision of 2 million rupees has been made for enlistment of consultancy services to carry out a study on the above-mentioned sectors. I move on to the cooperative division, Mr. Speaker, sir. Prior to December 2014, there was no well-defined strategy or appropriate legislative framework for the cooperative sector. This sector had been left to agonize. I am extremely proud to state that since December 2014, government has brought a new dynamism in this sector. No other government has placed cooperatives so high on its agenda. All schemes and projects initiated in favor of cooperatives since the past 7 years bear testimony to this fact. The Cooperatives Act came into operation in May 2017 to provide for the development of sustainable cooperative societies based on equity, good governance, and transparency. The National Cooperative College was set up with a proper structure and dedicated budget for training and capacity building projects. The Cooperative Development Unit was re-engineered to handhold and guide cooperators. Furthermore, an audit unit was created to provide free professional auditing services. In moving forward beyond the pandemic, Budget 2022-2023 emphasizes the importance of cooperatives to be recognized as economic actors that need to benefit from the financial relief packages. Moreover, they need to be considered as critical partners for the longer term in building more resilient communities and strengthening local economy. Throughout the pandemic, cooperatives have stepped up to support their members and communities. Producer and consumer cooperatives have kept supply chains of essential foods and goods moving. Cooperative credit unions have put initiatives in place to support members through the provision of loans at low interest rates. Cooperatives have also been the engine of employment for many women who lost their jobs or who needed to boost their household income. Mr. Speaker, sir, government's response to food security issue in this budget comes as a strong signal to boost our local production through cooperatives. 3 billion rupees are being allocated to farmers, planters, breeders, and fishermen. For the past year, the different schemes put in place by government have helped 194 cooperative societies involved in agricultural production have access to inputs, credit, and markets. 333 cooperative societies engaged in livestock activities have contributed directly in local meat and milk production. More than 30 cooperative societies have directly benefited from the Boost to Local Production scheme for a budget amounting to 5 million rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, I appreciate that the Boost to Local Production scheme budget has been doubled for this financial year, as well as exceptional measures such as subsidies on fertilizers, equipment of composting, and grants for micro-propagation and seed production. This will greatly assist cooperative societies in their diversification projects. Under the zero-budget natural farming scheme, cooperative societies will be able to produce natural fertilizers at a much lower cost and contribute towards the production of healthier local foods. Mr. Speaker, sir, to encourage the breeding of goats, provision of up to 200,000 rupees for the purchase of goats and construction of sheds will be offered. Under the goat farming scheme, cooperatives will be provided with the necessary support, improved technical know-how, and facilities to boost local production of meat. Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget 2022-2023 has laid emphasis on the transformation of agri-food systems towards green and climate-resilient factors. The agricultural industry is being provided with the relevant financial support and the infrastructure to leverage advanced technology. Cooperative societies are being encouraged to adopt mechanization and to innovate in order to sustain. In this vein, the IFCM will now offer preferential lease of 2.5% to cooperatives for the purchase of mini tractors. These measures will enable cooperatives to pursue further the mechanization process and reduce labor costs. To ensure the resilience of fishermen cooperative societies and to promote sustainable fishing, we welcome the increased grant up to 6 million rupees to acquire semi-industrial fishing vessels. In the same vein, the renovation of the Maison des Pêcheurs at Tamarin will help the accrued development of this sector. Works are expected to start shortly. Mr. Speaker, sir, another scheme which has supported the sustainability journey of cooperatives is a solar photovoltaic scheme. For the past 2 years, some 25 cooperative societies have been funded to embark in the production of green energy. In an urge to further diversify revenue sources, cooperatives will be able to benefit from grant facilities for the purchase of recycling equipment, transformation vehicles, and the waste recycling scheme. To further assist cooperative societies, the cooperative division of my ministry has already embarked on a re-engineering exercise. 5 cooperative business centers have been set up at Port-Louis, Rivière-du-Rempart, Henrietta, Rosebel, and Saint-Pierre. These centers act as one-stop shop to cooperatives. A common facility center at Saint-Pierre is also operational. Additional provision has been made to complete all remaining works. Mr. Speaker, sir, to professionalize the cooperative sector, the National Cooperative College has offered training programs which have been attended by more than 510 participants during the last financial year. I am pleased to inform the House that the National Cooperative College will soon introduce degree-level courses in collaboration with local and international training institutions. Beyond the immediate outlook, we must set out our eyes on the future. We have come this far as a nation because we are always thinking about tomorrow, planning and taking actions not just for the present, but also with the longer-term interests of Mauritius and Mauritians at heart. So we must position ourselves now for the challenges and opportunities of the decade ahead. We are entering a future where conditions are more volatile, the global environment more unpredictable, and change more fast-paced than ever. We can and must adjust and still excel in this new environment. We have made many sacrifices, stood together, and measured up as one people. I will never forget the contributions of our frontline warriors, how they displayed tremendous courage, valiantly took on personal risk to fight COVID-19, and went above and beyond the call of duty. I will always remember how different groups from the public and private sectors joined forces when we were overwhelmed with our first wave of infection. They worked hand in hand and against all odds. They remind us that we are stronger when we stand together. I am sure all of us will have our own memories of how the Mauritian spirit shone brilliantly in the darkest hours of the pandemic. While there are significant challenges ahead, I am confident that we can weather these headwinds if we work together, the people, the business community, and government. This way, we can face the future with confidence, with the people, for the people. As I prepare to leave the floor, Mr. Speaker, sir, may I commend the sterling efforts made by my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Finance, in bringing appropriate measures which give renewed confidence to the nation. May I also commend the drive, leadership, and vision of the Honourable Prime Minister in steering the country to new heights. Thank you for your attention, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1 hour.